Hey YouTube, Natalie here. Happy Wednesday. Wednesday is when I'm filming this. I got a few more videos coming on the channel that I've already pre-recorded over the weekend. That's what I do. I pre-record a bunch of videos on the weekend because I got to work during the week. But this video came up and I said, there's no way that I'm not going to react to this video because this is absolutely crazy. I've only seen like little bits and pieces of it. I've never watched the full thing for myself. And I'm going to be watching it now. And it's called Full Video of Restaurant Owner Going Off on Twerking Guests, True Kitchen, Twerking Gone Wrong. All right, so let's just react to this.
I invested a lot of money into buying this building, into developing this concept, so black people can have somewhere nice to go to, okay? Somewhere where we can feel good about ourselves as a, come on, stop the music, please.
Daquan, stop the music, please.
Somewhere where our people can feel good about ourselves as a culture, okay? Yeah. No, real talk. And so all this twerking and shit, take it to Prime, take it to Pink, don't bring it here because we're a restaurant. And so beyond that, 75% of our customers are ladies. And I want men to show respect for themselves for how they carry themselves here. So how can I tell the men to respect themselves when you guys are twerking on glass here? If you want to do it, get the fuck out of my restaurant. Because I did it for our people and I did it for our culture. So don't do it again. I don't want to hear it. If you don't like it, get out because I don't need your money. I need to provide something for my people. And don't do it again. Thank you.
Ooh, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay, so I believe that there is also video of the restaurant owner himself responding to the backlash and kind of talking about like where he was coming from. Wow. True Kitchen. Okay, so let me first react, just initial brush off of what he said and how he handled the situation. First and foremost, wow. First and foremost, I'm almost at a loss for words here. So a restaurant, I guess, is not a place for twerking, right? It's a place for eating. And there's a difference between a bar and a restaurant, except a lot of DC restaurants are also clubs because they don't have a lot of standalone clubs here in DC. So almost all of our clubs serve food, have sit-down tables, and then it transitions into a club like later on in the evening. So you will see people dining at tables while people are twerking in the middle of the room, right? That is, I think, a particular DC type of thing, right? Like I think that's a DC type of, vibe, right? Some places, maybe Atlanta, I don't know. Oh my God, look at me calling this place Atlanta. This did not happen in Atlanta. This happened at True Kitchen and Cocktails in Dallas, Texas, which I'm going to show you guys some pictures as I'm talking, is a gorgeous restaurant. I've never really eaten in Atlanta or partied in Atlanta. Maybe Atlanta has a different vibe. Maybe their restaurants are separate from their clubs, right? But I will say this. I think it was pretty clear that he had set the standard up until that point for what he wanted from his restaurant, but he had gotten his wires crossed. I say it like this. He had a live DJ playing. The live DJ was playing twerking music, okay? He's playing the type of music people twerk to. So I can understand if the patrons got confused or inspired and started twerking. And he then told them, from my understanding of the story, he told them to stop because they were twerking on the tables and putting their hands on the glass. He saw there was like glass partitions behind them and stuff like that. Putting their hands on the glass, fingerprints on the glass and things like that. So he was like, stop it, stop twerking on the table, stop putting your hands on the glass, cut it out. And they kept doing it anyway. And I think that's where like a lot of his frustration was coming from, is that he had already told them to stop. This is not the type of ambiance he was going for. And obviously you should never be twerking on someone's tables, especially in a restaurant. People are eating there, right? So you're twerking on the dance floor, it's one thing, but there's no dance floor there. So clearly they're not really inviting you to dance, but then also you're playing twerking music, right? And if it was back that A up, then maybe they just couldn't help themselves, because I can't when Back That A Up comes on. But anyway, I'm just being facetious. I think up until the point where he told them to stop and they didn't stop, he had every right to be upset, right? Here are the mistakes that he made, in my opinion. Cursing at his patrons, making a large announcement to the entire group of people that are there eating, all of your customers, telling them that you don't want their money. Very unprofessional. They're not your children, so you don't have the right to sit there and yell and scream and curse at everyone. What you can do is refuse service. You can tell the people that were doing what you didn't like that, we're going to comp your meal, but we're going to ask you to leave, and that could have been a very classy way of handling it. It seems like he hasn't quite gotten there yet with, I know the type of ambiance he wants for his restaurant, but he himself is not behaving in a way that encourages that type of behavior. First of all, if you want a nice sit down classy restaurant, and it looked very nice, like, don't even get me wrong, it's a lovely restaurant, it's very beautiful, right? Well appointed decor and all that type of stuff. If that is what you wanted, then you should have not been playing twerking music. Okay, you need to have some Anita Baker on. You need to have on some Sade. You need to have on the smooth jazz. You need to have on, you can't put on Get Me Bodied and not expect for the ladies to pat their weaves, right? You just can't do that. It's not gonna work, right? Because if we hear music that's gonna inspire us to dance, a lot of people are going to dance. So that's why when you go to restaurants like STK, or, you go to restaurants that are in hotels, there's some nice restaurants that are in nice hotels, for example, they are not playing twerking music with a live DJ, right? They might have a string quartet. They might have, a live band. They might have a jazz singer, if you want to have some type of live music. You have to match the ambiance that you want out of your patrons. And so I get that you want a certain ambiance, but you're actually not doing everything that needs to be done in order to inspire that. On the other hand, that does not give them the right to ruin your tables by standing on your tables, ruin your walls by putting their hands on the glass partitions. That doesn't give them the right to do that, right? And so he had every right to say to stop. And when they didn't listen, he had the right to refuse them service and ask them to leave. But he should not have disrupted his paying customers, everyone else. He should not have disrupted their nice evening, right? That wasn't the other people's fault. And then finally, the commentary that he was making about, I want men to respect themselves, but how do I get them to respect you if you're doing this? People, men or women, have the right to be respected because they are human beings, right? They exist in the world. They have the right to respect. And we need to get over this respectability politics of telling women that they have to, if you twerk, you can't be respected. Every woman has done some type of twerk or dance in their life. Now, it's a time and a place thing. And obviously, they are not behaving in accordance with how you want people to behave in your restaurant. And I totally get that. But you're making some type of general, statement that is kind of like slut shaming. And I don't like that type of thing, right? You just didn't need to go there. Those type of generalized statements, especially because my understanding is that not every woman was doing that. And you had a particular table of women that were doing that, and you did not address them in particular. So let's find his response to this whole debacle.
You had music playing in there. There was a festive atmosphere. What is it seems like you have a particular problem with twerking. At least that's the way I read it. Tell us about that.
Well, let me explain. First of all, I don't have a particular problem with twerking. At our restaurant, you're always going to hear music because we want to make sure that it's a constant positive vibe for our guests. One of the things that we don't want
But just like how he said, some places encourage dancing, but they want ballroom dancing. If you want to play music, and it can even be urban music, hip hop music. Don't play twerk songs. Just don't play those. But again, I'm sure he couldn't have anticipated people were going to get on his tables, and I have a major problem with that.
though, is we don't want guests standing up in their seats, grabbing glass and twerking on glass. For those who like twerking, we don't have a problem with it. There's lots of nightclubs people do it at. They do it in their home. But at our restaurant, we want to be mindful of that. Our restaurant is one where my mother eats at, my grandmother eats there, my sons work there, and we want to make sure we keep a good environment. And so I'm not here to make any indictment on people who twerk because it gives people a good time, but that's just not something that I can have in my restaurant. One of the most undervalued people in this world, probably the most undervalued, is Black women.
And see, my problem with him is trying to expand this into some larger commentary on Black women, because we could make this some larger commentary on Black men. But there are men and women of all races that do not know how to behave in certain social situations because they were not socialized to, right? Regardless of the race. I know that we have something in our community where we're afraid of how other people judge us, but you cannot turn that into then you being basically racist yourself towards Black women just because they're twerking. The same could be said because you're a Black man, you don't know how to run a classy restaurant, because a classy restaurant would not have a live DJ playing twerk music, right? And would not curse at their patrons. I cannot imagine a classy restaurant in which the owner of the restaurant would come onto the floor and start cursing at the patrons for not being classy. That's not how you handle those things, right? So that is kind of like what the issue is that I know he has an aspirational goal for his restaurant to be perceived in a certain way, but in executing that goal, he's exposing the fact that he is not quite ready or trained to have the type of restaurant or environment or ambiance that he desires in his business. So I think that he needs some business and etiquette training himself in what he seeks. And you want to be careful not to alienate the clientele that you are going to rely on, because he said like 70% of the women in his restaurant were 70% of the people in his restaurant were Black women. You want to be careful who you're talking to. Now, again, getting on the table is completely wrong. Touching on the glass, completely wrong. And I think twerking, especially after he told you not to twerk, is wrong. It's a restaurant, and again, without a dance floor, right? And there's not a dance floor because you had to get up on the table in order to do it. So I'm not saying his frustrations are invalid. They're totally valid. It's the way that he responded as a business owner that I have the problem with.
Be mindful of how they look and how they appear. And we have so many classy and nice Black women that come to this restaurant that define what True Kitchen and Cocktails is. And the actions of the women standing on the sofa and pushing on the glass, twerking, is not that. And so when we talk about advancing the culture, I'm mindful of how we all look as people. And that's why I apologize for using the F word, but that's also why I'm very, very steadfast in making sure that our guests carry themselves in the right way at this restaurant.
But it does then sound like your issue is with twerking. And it's not that it somehow doesn't paint a proper picture the way you see it. And that doesn't seem to distinguish nightclubs versus your restaurant. It sounds like you don't think twerking is the proper way of presenting the culture. I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
Kevin, the word you used was classy.
I'm not saying it's not the proper way to present the culture when you're dancing and having a good time at a club, but I am saying it's an improper way to present our culture in my restaurant.
I get it. I really do get both sides of the debate. I absolutely get it. And this is not like slam dunk super easy, right? But I wish that, first of all, if you're going to have a live DJ, you need to dictate the type of music that you're going to be playing. And it should not be club music if you do not want a club atmosphere. And, I have thrown several parties, several. Oh, God, I love to throw a good party. I have thrown many parties, and I know that by throwing these parties at event locations, at my home, outdoors, overseas, I've thrown a whole bunch of different parties because hosting is one of the things that I really like doing. And so from my own experience, I know that the type of music that I play will dictate how your guests behave, right? The type of food that you serve, the type of dress code that you require, the type of standard that you keep your restaurant to. And it seems like he had all of those down. The food looks amazing. You guys can go look at it. The food looks so good at that restaurant. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't know where I was. The phone just cut off. I had to talk to my mom. But anyway, here's my final thoughts. Let me just wrap this up. Final thoughts. He needs to maybe do some further professional development. People need to stop equating Black women twerking with being classless, because when other women twerk, it's seen as fun and quirky and funny. And when Black women twerk, it's seen as, maybe because we're so good at it, it seems as overly sexualized and classless and trashy. It's not that at all, in my opinion. But there is a time and a place for everything. And the women that were there that were twerking on his tables were completely in the wrong. There's like no getting around that. In the future, in order to prevent that type of thing from happening in his environment, he should have, live music, soft music, the type of music that does not attract that type of dancing. And if people persist to do anything in his restaurant that he finds not to comport with what he desires from his patrons, he should ask those people to leave. If he wants to, for business purposes, comp them their meal and ask them to leave, or not comp them their meal and then ask them to leave. Ask those people to leave and treat the rest of your paying customers with the same class and respect that you expect from your patrons. Does that make sense? So that's my opinion on it. I think it's really, really interesting. It brings up so many cultural questions. Just like so many. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Let's talk about this. All right, you guys have a good day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.